If you're planning to start with the PhD position or working as a research fellow in the UK, then you might likely hear about a specific procedure that is performed by the government and involves the assessment of the approval scheme for the applicant. Or in other words, you're dealing with the ATAS, which stands for the Academical Technical Approval Scheme. However, and sometimes the application might not go in the way that you expect, which may result in the submitting the so-called application or rebuttal letters, and in order to turn over the initial decision. And in this video, unlike all the other videos, I'm gonna cover the conditions when the applicant did not succeed with the ATAS or have a rebuttal status, so that it leads to the actions to appeal the decision and make any further actions on that matter. So with this video, it provides the full guidance and ultimate set of further steps of further actions involving the way of how and what you have to put in rebuttal. So you're going to be sure that at least you're staying at its best with the related application. We're going to start by covering the concepts of the ATAS very quick. If you running into this for the very first time, so all you have to do is just start with the related guidance on the Gov.uk platform. The key things that you have to know is that, and unlike all the other documents, that there is no fast tracking service for the ATAS in particular. The platform says it takes at least 30 days to process the applications, which is my prolongate and taking a longer time. According to a review on the internet, and due to the relatively large amount of the applications that the department experienced with, you might expect that it's going to be prolongated for definitely more days than it mentioned on the website. And last but not least is that if for some reason you're willing to find out more information about the decision, you won't be able to do that. So speaking shortly, there's no option to find why it was made decision in that way or the other way. You can also check out your status, and this is again shows whether you actually want to and necessary be involved in the story of the ATAS by following the form as you see on the screen. Just check if you need for the ATAS certificate, which is navigates you to the form where you can just fill all the related fields, and in the end it shows you whether you are in the list of person who's have to apply for this or not. And as was mentioned earlier, so every story with the ATAS and obtaining this certificate is quite unique. I'm gonna start by showcasing my own one, and in particular why it leads to the refusal status and further questions. All right, so this diagram illustrates the set of the actions that were made by my side and the story how I'd be involved in it. I did this in the UK, so this shows the previous area of the available visa through which I did the following actions from left-hand side to the right-hand side as follows. So I first submitted the ATAS application, and after several months, I have to submit for the visa. I did not have the result for the ATAS by that time, which results in submitting a supportive letter, which is not the part of the related video. However, you can find on YouTube on how to approach the following actions. There is a set of videos, and one of them is I wait for the ATAS 135 days. So you can have a look on how to proceed with this. But what's important to mention here is that after submitting for the visa, it turns out into the granted status. However, and as you can see later on the diagram, which is after 1 week of the time, and earlier submitted the ATAS results in the refusal status. And this becomes a point that raises a lot of questions, especially on the further actions and the status in the UK, which, and among all these questions, we can raise several of them, such as what's the actual visa status? Am I eligible actually to work in the UK? And do I need the ATAS? Because on one hand, visa is granted, so technically I'm eligible to work, right? To cope up with this, I believe there are so many ways exist on how you can answer on these questions. However, in my actions involve the reaching out the helpline for the visa-related inquiries, is the phone numbers that you can find on the Gov.uk. So by calling them, the most key takeaway that I get with the further suggestions on the actions that can be taken from my side to continue with this is to reach out specific type of the legal advisors. So it's very important they differs from the common advisors that you have in the UK. And one of them are related to immigration advice authority and immigration related services and inquiries. So the form goes is pretty straightforward. It's available on the website of the Gov.uk that allows you to find the most suitable place where you can obtain for the related services. So you have to put the postcode, you choose the distance, you also select the category and whether you need a charging fee or not. And last but not least is the type of the advice. Generally speaking, you can proceed with the default options here. And the most importantly, that the related assistance that was in my particular case, it took me free of charge. In other words, to explain why is this for free, is because in that particular case, there is no evidence in excess of the documents that might help you as an output from the legal advisor. So there is no particular reason to charge because of lack of the evidence. However, if you reach the legal advisor, you might have the two valuable outcomes that they can contribute with your further advances. And with all of that, I'm referring to the documents to which they can rely on to explain your further actions, necessity for applying for the rebuttal, and on how to compose this letter. And with these documents, I'm referring for two of them. So one of them is the skilled worker case guidance, as you can see on the screen. So why this document is important is that it has, on page 27, ATAS requirement. So if we navigate through, I'm just going to zoom for a little quick. It has a list of the following bullet points where you have to just double check or suitability and what are the parameters are required to basically submit your rebuttal and make sure that you are staying up to date with all of this. So since this document is for the skilled worker, it says this, you have to be skilled for the skilled worker, you have no issues with the nationality. This is how you find more about the occupations code, because it has to be listed in this document. And obviously you have to be eligible to do the research, so you have to have the PhD, etc., etc. So this is one of the documents which you have to use this information that will be necessary later on. Then we'll see when they're going to complete the form of the rebuttal. Again, this is the skilled worker case guidance. And there's another document, which is workers and temporary workers guidance for sponsors. So this is basically the part 2 for the earlier document that we've seen. How this differs and how this is going to help us? The answer is that this is more for understanding on what's going on the side of the sponsor. So again, as you can see, they have a section of the ATAS requirement, and you may see what sponsor would gonna do in the case if you have ATAS and different decisions on the ATAS. Okay, so I'm gonna zoom again. So you can see there is a section which is if the worker needs the NDTS certificate, which is false in the domain of the related video, and it has the specific paragraph 7.42 where we can get to the actual answer. So if the worker who works an ATS certificate doesn't obtain one and include the copy certificate, they say that from the top to the organization, so they're going to refuse the application. And there might be problem with the license of the sponsor. And in the end, so the recommendation for the sponsor would be that they're not eligible to continue to sponsor worker who is a subject to the ATS requirement if the status is refused. Let me explain you in greater detail, because there is so many information on how these two documents could be combined all together in order to find out on what will be the further actions and why specifically we needed to apply for the ATAS. So this is the diagram, assuming that we have the employee, which has a visa, has no ATAS, who's planning to work or doing a PhD in the university. And it has a visa which has been issued by the government and the Home Office in particular. As we've seen from the document earlier, no ATAS assumes that the skilled worker caseworker guidance, or the guidance part number 2, actually restricts the sponsor, who is the university, from paying a fee or paying a salary to the employee. Or in other words, they can continue with the employee. It means like employee is not going to have salaries. Another important aspect of staying in the UK is that you have a right to rent, which is prescribed by the visa. But at the same time, to have this right and use this right, you have to prove to the landlord the fact that you actually earn the money by being in a particular position. So with all of that, this situation raising concerns about your right to rent in general, so that it goes very contradiction with the visa. And with all these scenario is what might happen, is what the legal advisors would tell in the context to what might happen with the employee who running into this case is that the Home Office might issue or turn over their decision with initial visa after several months, as long as the ATAS is not approved. So in other words, it is quite important not to deal with the story, and actually the solution and the only way out from here is to turn over the initial decision with the ATAS. And this becomes the point of the last part of this video. So now we are clear that we have to apply for the rebuttal with that or similar to that scenarios. And let's take a look on how the refusal letter looks. The first refusal letter looks from that we will receive from the related department. And as you can see, it represents the following text. So it says that according to the application, obviously you don't have a certificate, and it says that the ATAS status is refused. What we can get from this letter is that it says that the rebuttal is supposed to be submitted within the 30 calendar days, and it is important to attach the form that they provided for you. So it's an XLS document in which you have to put all the necessary information for the rebuttal. Okay, so you have 30 days to submit this form. Now let's take a look on how and what you have to put into this form. So this is how it looks like, an exported version. The original is an XL6. So it goes pretty straightforward. Let me zoom first, and we're gonna go through the fields in particular. Again, so it goes pretty straightforward. So you have to put the date, you have to put the name of the applicant, nationality, ATAS application number, birth date, date of the application, email, and university, followed by the subject area that which you perform studies. Another recommendation that is very important and that could be taken from the legal advisor involves the following key aspects that requires in completion of the related letter. I can zoom a little bit more and just locate here. These key aspects are as follows. So you have to presenting your eligibility for applying, so that you are actually suits to the role for this. Necessity for applying is that you need an ATAS, in other words. Followed by the consistencies that we're going to see here, no intention or laws violation, and finally is going to be a remarkable story of the ATAS. So it goes in the following way. So according to ATAS requirements, skilled worker caseworker guidance, what we've seen earlier, but was version 15. So you have to provide that listed in the potential applicants, followed by having all the supporting documents and confirming the PhD degree, and that you have no criminal record check, which is again suits to your eligibility. next part is that you have to have an ATAS, which is this line says, all right, you kindly ask you the ATAS team to reconsider the matter, followed by the actions that were performed with the university. So again, it contributes to the consistency, so that you see that the role is being negotiated, so the university is happy about it, funds are allocated, and that the project is not a personal gain, but it also affects the nation stakes. And last paragraph is again where you contributing to the previous history of the ATAS. As again, you can see there's a separate line goes below where you can put all the related information. So if you have, you can also explain the successful story in the past. So once this form is completed, this brings to another part of the email. So you sending this information, which represents a small email in which you are attaching this and export it in a PDF form, followed by the response, which is in general takes not as long as it was earlier. So usually it's within the time ranges that were mentioned, up to 1 month, and represents the additional letter. And this is how you finding the decision, which works in a bit different way because you don't know what to expect. However, and once you open the document, it represents the content as you see on the screen. So at first it goes with the accepting the fact that you submit the application. The necessity of the related checks is actually what we already seen in the sponsor guide number 2. It wasn't covered that much. However, there is a specific section on that, and it mentioned this paragraph S731, necessity for related checks performed from the government. Finally, they are accepting the fact that they reviewed and carefully checked your application. And in the last paragraph, that will be my congratulations. If you have the following line, which says, I'm pleased to advise that whilst dissatisfied with the procedures that were performed before, it's a content to return the decision and award with the certificate, which is going to be issued shortly. So what this letter means is that with the separate email, you will have the actual certificate that you are ready to use and start your position. Again, if you are part of this story, so my congratulations, and I believe this video will be very helpful. Feel free to ask me all the other questions if you have. I'm quite open to chat and discuss with all the other platforms that you can reach me out and continue with this. And with all that, wish you all the best. And I believe this video was really helpful. And see you in the next one.